Thank you, everybody, for being here today. If we could all grab a seat, please. Thank you all for being here today. Let me introduce myself. I think some of you might know who I am. My name is Bob Calera. I've been teaching here since about 1990, and about 2 or 3 years after starting here, Brad took me under his wing, and he was my mentor, he's my friend, and I miss him. My wife would also often say that we were like Statler and Waldorf, the two old grumpy guys in the Muppet Show. We were always in the back of some meeting yelling and being mean and grumpy all the time. That was Brad and I. Before we get started, I want to make sure I say some thank yous. Thank you to the Principal Gabriel Fernandez and the district for allowing us to have this memorial here in the gym. Huge thank you for Assistant Vice Principal Rob Velasco, who was actually one of Mr. Dolin's athletes back a few days ago. He was huge in getting the chairs in here and getting the tarps down and all of those fun, exciting things. Cesar and Gloria Camacho, who contacted me about a month and a half ago and asked about live streaming, and I said, yes, let's do that, and then I never returned their call. And then earlier this week, he's like, hey, are we going to do this or what? And so he is live streaming this right now. So thank you, Cesar, for that. When the family approached me right after Brad passed and said, gave the idea of putting it here, the most inconvenient place possible for them. They live in San Diego and in Portland, and Azusa's near neither of those. I approached Miss Gehring, Sandy Gehring, and I said, Sandy, I don't know how to do this. And she did all of the heavy lifting today, getting things put together, and I really appreciate that. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Mr. Dolin changed my life. I'm sure he changed many of your lives as well. Thank you for being here. And again, I thank you for the Dolin family again. This means a lot to us. We're here today to honor an amazing man who dedicated his life to helping students improve theirs. I gotta say how much Brad would hate this moment in time. He would absolutely despise it. He hated notoriety on every way. Most of what he does, we don't know. We don't know what he did. When he retired, some students approached me and said, let's put together a retirement party for Mr. Dolin. I said, you got it. And we found a venue, and we started putting everything together. And I go, okay, you got to show up. You going to show up? He's like, yeah, I'm going to show up. And I got a call the next day. He's like, there's no way I'm showing up. I got to tell a quick story. So every morning, Brad and I would meet in the main office. We'd get our attendance, and we'd walk up. Our classroom shared a wall. Some of you might remember there was a hole in it for a while, and you would knock on the wall, and I'd go over there, and my kids would knock on the wall, they'd come over there. But every morning we'd walk up before zero period, and we'd share, the stories of the weekend or whatever. And one Monday morning, I'm like, how was your weekend? He goes, oh, I was in the Bay Area. I'm like, the Bay? He never went anywhere. I'm like, what were you doing in the Bay Area? Goes, oh, well, a year ago I got a phone call, and they said, we want to honor your excellence in teaching. I go, a year ago? He goes, yeah, I hung up. I'm not going up there. I'm like, why did you go up there? So then they called me back, and they said, Mr. Dolin, you got to come up here. We want to honor you. So he said, all right, I'll go up there. So he went up there, and I go, so how was it? He goes, it was all right. They gave me $10,000. I go, $10,000? That's fantastic. I go, what'd you do with the money? He goes, I bought somebody a car. I'm like, I could have used a car. I got a mortgage. You could. So fast forward about 3 months later, 3 months down the road, we're doing our same walk we do every single morning, fixing the world's problems. And I go, how was the weekend? He's like, he's grumping. I'm like, what? He goes, I got my taxes done. I go, okay, taxes are never happy. He goes, remember that 10,000? I go, yeah. Because apparently I had to pay taxes on that, so I had to write a check this weekend. He was an incredibly private person. There were so many layers. We will never know. During this process, the family shared some stuff with me. I'm like, what? I shared some stuff with them, and they're like, no, that's not right. I'm like, this is what he told me. I don't know. We do know his dedication to his students and his athletes. The steps he took to make sure students would have a chance to play sports, go to college. There are people in this room that would not be where they are if it was not for him. He was paying for their applications, driving them to schools. But he was also a safe person. In his room at lunch was often filled with kids in the in crowd, the cool kids. Right next to them would be a student with no connections to anybody, because Mr. Dolin was a safe place. Some of you in here were part of the cool kids. Some of you in here, high school was a terrible time. But everyone knew his room was safe. I'm not sure what stories will be shared today. I guess there's going to be some laughs and some tears, mostly a lot of love. Brad was loved by his students, his athletes, his peers, his family. Of course, some of his administrators might have thought he was a pain in the ass, but he was always focused on what would help kids. With that, let's get somebody up here who's more interesting. First set of speakers we have today is from the family. Damien, his nephew, and Courtney, his niece, would like to say some words.
Good afternoon. I'm Damien Dolin. Brad was my uncle. This is amazing. I had no idea. This is my second time to campus. The last time was 25 years ago. And I knew my uncle, and I knew my uncle, the teacher, and I heard stories, and Bob told me to expect quite a few people. This is blowing me away. Brad was a very special guy, and he was a unique guy. Nobody else like my Uncle Brad. He didn't care about all the things that most of us do. He wasn't about material things. Redecorating his apartment for Uncle Brad was when the old TV broke, then you get the new TV, and you'd put the new TV on top of the old TV, because that made for the perfect TV stand. He just didn't care about that kind of stuff. Didn't care about cars, didn't care about houses, didn't take trips. Really cared about his clothes. Man, it has been a 30-year fight between the two of us to try to get him to wear nicer clothes. Then I gave up on that. And then we just tried to get him to wear newer clothes. And I gave up on that. And what he would say every time I would buy him clothes, and an aside, when we moved him out of his last place and I was moving his things, half of his closet was all of the brand new clothes that I've bought him over the last 10 years. And it just sat there new. But what he would say is, these clothes have sentimental value to me. And I never thought of clothes that way. But he would say, this t-shirt, I wore this. My students gave me this t-shirt. Or, oh, this sweatshirt, I wore this sweatshirt when I was coaching this particular team. That's the stuff that he cared about. He never got married, never had children of his own. And I think that there was a reason for that. There was a reason he didn't care about the material things, and there was a reason that he never got married, and a reason he never had kids on his own. And I think it's so that there was space for him to give his love and his time and his effort to the things that mattered most to him. And that was this place, and the students here, and his family, us, and his friends. There's not a long list of friends, but the friends that he spent time with and chose to spend time with meant a ton to my Uncle Brad. And so it was not a usual life that he had, but it was a very, very special life. He loved his students. You know, I know that he was most proud of his SAT prep course. And he would talk about it, you know, and when I was studying for the SAT, he talked to me about my SAT. And he loved talking about college, and he loved when his kids would get into school. I would hear all about it. I remember when I was applying to colleges, he was telling me about his students, and every time I saw him, up until recently, he was still talking about the kids that he felt like he helped get into school. And that was his life's work. That was his life's work. And so there was space in his life for that, and that was a huge part of it. And then there were his friends, and he was a loyal and dedicated friend to his friends, to Mike and to Dan and to Bob. And then the side of him that you all probably didn't know as much, he loved his family, my family, our family. We have a small family, but Brad loved us completely, and we loved him. He had a complicated relationship with his parents, and they were tough. My grandmother was tough, and my grandfather was tough. But he loved them without question, and he took care of them, particularly my grandmother, despite their issues all the way to the end, because that's the kind of guy that he was. He and my dad had a very special relationship. They were best friends, for sure. And I don't think he ever fully got over my dad's passing. And then my sister and I, you know, he didn't have kids of his own, but we were as close as he could get. And we were super tight. And he was tight with Mike, my brother-in-law, and my wife, Andrea. And then he was so close and loved our kids, Rex and Willow and Cole and Nick. And, you know, for the last 8 years or so, he was down in San Diego every weekend at my house, because he would get a chair just like that one, although that one's a lot nicer than the crappy one that he used to bring. And he would bring that chair, and he would come watch my kids from when they were this high playing sports, and in a very Brad way. He would never tell them they played well. But if he didn't have too many criticisms, then you know that they were all right. And for sure, there were never enough bounce passes. Not by me when I played, not by my kids when they played. We love Uncle Brad. We will miss him so much. I can't tell you, you know, to take kind of this abstract idea that I've always had about my uncle's life here, and I always knew that he did good things, and I always knew that people appreciated it in abstract. But to see this, you know, Bob's right, he would have hated it, but boy, I love it. So thank you guys all for coming.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Courtney Dolin. A lot of what I have to say was just said, so I'm sorry if I repeat myself, but or repeat my brother. But mostly, before my Uncle Brad retired, we had an agreement that he had to have 3 hobbies before he could retire. I read somewhere that if you don't have 3 hobbies before you retire, you tend to go crazy. So when he was preparing to retire, we were trying to figure out some hobbies that he could get into, and I suggested everything that could possibly be suggested, and you can imagine the way he responded to anything, sailing, biking, any of the things. What we came to realize is that the only two things he really cared about were us and the students' lives that he had had for so many years, and that part was going to be really hard for him to walk away from. And it was really hard for him to walk away from, and something he wished he had never done. Yeah, I know that he was an amazing teacher. He was a motivator. He had his own style of teaching. And you know that the more he bugged you, the more he loved you. And I'm sure most of you can speak to that better than I can as a teacher. As an uncle, to me, he was a sweet protector, a good friend, confidant, and a shoulder for me whenever I needed someone that was just mine. As a big brother to my dad, he was a best friend, teammate, and survivor of shared life experiences. They took great care to keep each other safe and to keep each other happy and take care of each other for my dad's entire life. My mom and Brad have always been close, but when my dad died, he told Brad to take care of his girls. And for the past 8 years, Brad has taken that job very seriously. This is a huge loss for her. Beyond that, he was the best great uncle that could possibly exist. A lot of people aren't as close with their great uncles as our kids have gotten to be. They've known Uncle Brad as a constant in their lives. He wrote them about their math skills. He made them handmade worksheets and sent them to our houses when he thought their teachers weren't doing a good enough job. In kindergarten. He taught them card games and how to manage baseball statistics. He bought my son Rex and my nephews Nick and Cole baseball cards starting when they were born in cases. And so we have cases, years worth of cases of baseball cards, and that's mostly because my grandmother, his mother, threw away all of his baseball cards when he left for college, and he was mad about it until the day he died. So we wanted to make sure his nephews had plenty of baseball cards. He would also send them a list. He sent Rex lists of the valuable baseball cards that he should take out of the packs and put in special cases because they'd be worth money someday. So Rex does that often now, sometimes now that he's old enough to do so. He did that for him when he was 3. So now that he's 11, he's able to go through those. He adored my daughter Willow. And up until the last days of his life, marveled at the fact that she is this amazing basketball player that comes from 2 very artistic parents, and always was just like, you have the athlete? You're the ones with the athlete? And I think he instilled that in me from day one. How could I not have a basketball playing daughter? I think my Uncle Brad was often my favorite person. He believed in me in a way that no one else did. He supported me no matter what. And he believed in finding the best in anyone who was willing to work for it. I was very lucky to be his niece. And from what I see, I'm not alone in feeling his love. I'm so sad that we're all here for this reason, and I miss him terribly. But I'm so happy to see how loved he was. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Damien. Thank you, Courtney. It's going to be a tough day, I think. The next people who'd like to speak is talking about some friendships and some coaching. Coach Scherf and Beltran. Robert?
So I got up this morning, and normally in the morning on Sundays, I kind of play my church music and kind of walk around. Motown today. So pretty excited about that. And then also I had this little list written out and speeches and things, and I decided to do a little more Mr. Dolin style. So every day I showed up on campus, I got these. I got a little piece of paper, little reminders on all kinds of stuff from Mr. Dolin. So this might be a little rough here, but this is how I think you like it. So, there's a couple things some people already said that I'm not going to regurgitate here. So I got to know Mr. Dolin in a lot of aspects of my life. So I went to Magnolia Elementary School, and he was a 6th grade teacher there when I went there, and I only knew this later because my mom told me. But she said I didn't have Mr. Dolin as a teacher; he was taught next to me. But she said I didn't put you in Mr. Dolin's class because I heard stories about him, and I'm stories. What are you talking about? And my mom goes, well, I heard he threw this kid in the closet and locked the closet, and and then when we would have like 6th graders versus teachers competitions, he was out there playing softball and basketball, and the man had the quickest hands I've ever seen. Like I see go, he just, even when I coached with them, all the girls, he was out there in his 50s and stealing the ball from them. It was pretty amazing. So, but I got to know him as a teacher. And then I had him in high school in geometry, and I teach math up in the high desert right now, and I taught math here for 20 years. And I always got straight A's in everything. I got a C in Mr. Dolin's class. I have no idea why. So he said I wasn't very smart. So I got to know him as a teacher, first of all. And then when I got out of college, I came here and I got to know him as a colleague a little bit. And just a few little stories and things, funny things about him. He used to throw chalk at students. I'm sure some of you got hit by a random piece of chalk in your day. It was all about the kids for him, all about them going to college, the SAT prep class that he taught and managed. And he used to say this thing, kids would come up to him and say, hey, Mr. Dolin, I'm your favorite student, right? And he would go, no, you're number 2. And they would go, oh, who's number 1? And he'd go, well, everybody else is number 1. You're number 2. So, and then and just another personal story that not many people know about, but I came in one day, and I wasn't having a good week. I was sick. I had this really bad stuffy nose, and I show up, and he's like, oh, hey, I have something for you tomorrow that'll fix that. And okay, so I show up the next day, come here at 7. Like Calera said, we used to meet in the front office here, and then we'd all walk up to our classrooms together. So I walk to his classroom, and I get in there, and he's like, shuts the door, and he's like, here you go. And he gives me this bag of white powder. And I'm like, Mr. Dolin, I don't do cocaine. And he goes, no, this has like, I don't remember, dried vodka, paprika, some kind of jalapeno, whatever. And he goes, you just snort it, like, and so I'm like, all right. So he goes, but you're gonna be here for about 30 minutes. Okay, so I snorted that thing and it went down and it burned so bad and I just drained for the whole day, but my stuffy nose was gone. So, just a few little stories about that. I had the opportunity of coaching with him. I coached girls basketball here for 10 years. 8 of those years was with Brad Dolin, and I'm glad the banners are still up. But if you look up there, we have 5 championships, and majorly because of Mr. Dolin. He was the catalyst. He taught me. It was my first head coaching experience, and I just learned so much about the game from him, and so much how to handle the kids, and so much how to just be passionate about what you do, and as an assistant coach, he was just so valuable. He coached the defense for us, and he would make comments to me here and there. And one time he told me we lost the game by 3 points, and he goes, "That's your fault." And I go, what do I do? He's all, you could have called 2 plays. Any coach that loses by less than 3 points or less, you could have gotten 2 more baskets because you made a better call as a coach. And so I always took that to heart and tried to work harder because of that. And we would go scouting together. Hey, let's go scout this team and go see what they're like. we'd show up. I'd be all ready, have my notebook and everything. We'd be there for about 3 minutes, and he's like, all right, I know what they're doing. Let's go. That's it? Like, you have enough? Like, oh, yeah, we're good. We're going to beat this team. Okay, all right. So, and then a couple little personal stories about some of the players. He would make predictions. And one year, I don't know if she's here or not. Her name was Chantel Meza. She was going to be a junior, but she could really shoot. And other stuff, it's kind of iffy on. And he said, no, we need to keep her. I guarantee you she's going to win 2 games for us. And I'm like, okay, we'll keep her up. And sure enough, we're playing at a tournament in Ganesha, and we're out there, and we make this pass. I think it was supposed to go to maybe Lysandra. And it tips off Lysandra. It goes to Chantel, and she just hucks this ball up. Not even really good shot. It goes in. And he looks at me, and he goes, that's one. So then we're playing in the tournament here over our Azusa tournament. We're in the championship game, and we're playing against Wilson High School, and it happened right over there in the corner. Something happened, boom, 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 and she got the ball and shot a 3, made the 3, and he goes, 2. So, but most of all, his generosity just showed amongst the players. Lysandra's here today, and she can vouch for this, but she got a scholarship to go to San Diego State University because of Mr. Dolin. And she had to get on a travel ball team and travel around, and it was very expensive. And Mr. Dolin took every one of his checks that he got for coaching, and he never kept it. He gave it away, and he paid for almost every dime that she got to travel to New York, Seattle, Chicago, and play basketball. And so we were so proud that she made it there and graduated and was a success. And but that was because of him, and just his heart just showed through. And I'm just grateful to have coached with him. He also coached football for 2 years. So we got him out. I don't even know how we talked him into it, but he got out there. He coached for 2 years on the freshman team. And one week, he's like, hey, I got these 3 great plays. He's like, you got to let me call him this week. I'm like, all right, let's practice them. So we put his plays in, and we're running the plays at practice and all that. And we go to, I think we were playing at Gar. We go down to Gar High School, and we weren't doing very good. And I go, hey, you want to call your plays? He's like, yeah, let's call my plays. So he gets out, he calls 3 plays. We got about negative 30 yards. And he goes, if I ever have the great idea of calling plays again, just tell me to go to hell. And so I thought that was pretty funny. So after coaching with him, then he was also my mentor for everything. And he taught me about adversity, how to behave as a coach, because I had moments when I was young, not knowing how to behave on the court with the players. You know, I've learned a lot since him and from him. And he, like I said, he'd give me these little notes every day. I mean, they would have 2 things on it sometimes and 12, and I really did my best to try to, to make him proud and go through his list. He loved the kids. He didn't sugarcoat anything with anybody either. He was straightforward and honest. I remember the way he talked to adults is the same way he talked to the kids. And I was out watching him do with Todd a clinic for softball one time. He's out there with like little 5 and he's the same thing. He's not talking any different to him. And so I thought that was pretty neat of him, kind of thing. He kind of was a father figure to me as well. My dad passed away when I was just a couple months old. I had a stepfather that wasn't much of a father for me. So I kind of leaned on him a lot for advice in the years, and I'm very gracious for that. And then I do consider him my friend as well. I got to see him in all aspects of my life. And as a friend, he took care of me in a lot of different ways. He let me use his condo a couple weekends down at the beach for my family. Instead of getting a hotel, he volunteered that. When I would bring my kids around, he would just light up. It was just amazing to see like how much he just loved kids, and knowing a little bit now about his family here, it makes so much sense, because he just absolutely loved my kids as well. Anytime we went out, it was always breakfast, because I think he was up at like 3 and went to bed at like 6, like something like that. When you talked about hobbies earlier, so he told me his hobbies were he gets up, he works out, he washes his car, he goes to the beach. Back in the day, would go swimming in the ocean, right? And he would do that every day. And I said, "You wash your car every day?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's a hobby." And I'm, all right. So, and Bob talked about the money he took in cars. I know of 2 people that got cars in this room right now from Mr. Dolin, and that's what I know. I don't know if there's any more. But just to be done with something, 3, and just, pass it on, and with nothing, not worrying about anything. He just loved them so much. So he was an ear to listen to me, listen to my stories. He'd loan me money before when I needed it, for things, and he just graciously did it. I didn't even ask him, he just did it. So he's one of the greatest men I've ever known. And I respect him a lot. And I could never call him Brad. He didn't even my teacher, can't do it, And so I want to say something. You guys, if Mr. Dolan impacted your life, put your hands up right now. Just put your hands up. So Mr. Dolan, if you're looking down, this is amazing. Look at all the lives you've influenced. And I just only hope that someday that I will have that same impact because of how he impacted me.
I wasn't going to say anything. I was on that list. I thought it was last minute. I saw myself. I'm like, I really didn't want to say anything. Just wanted to hear everybody else's stories. But I just got a couple quick ones. Mr. Dolan was my math teacher when I was here, and he was awesome. And of course, I got kicked out a few times. And I know AJ was in that same class, so he understands. We always had to high five Mr. Dolan. Sometimes he'd tell him, "Get out of here," and go back to our seats or whatever. But as I got older and I started coaching, and I'm a big UCLA fan, he knew that. So every time UCLA was playing, he would text me when they win, like, "Hey," or when they would lose, "Your Bruins suck." I'm like, "I know they do." And then the next week they'd win, and he goes, "Nice win, but they still suck." And I'm just like, "Thanks, Mr. Dolan." And Schiffer's right. I could never call him by his first name, even today. It was always Dolan, Mr. Dolan. And one of the last memories I had, Schiffer and I shared with him, was we went out to San Diego. We met him. I think he was coming from a game or going to the game afterwards. And we met for lunch, and we just kind of hung out, and we talked. And if anybody knows Mr. Dolan, when you go out to eat with him, he never lets you pay. You try to grab the check, try to put money down, he just throw it back at you. And that was one thing about him. He just, like people say, he just didn't care about that kind of stuff. He was just wanted to, be around people that he loved and cared, his students and former students and friends. So I'm very grateful to have met him and known him as long as I did, and thank the family as well, you guys, for having him in our lives. It was awesome, but thank you.
He made me pay for checks half the time. What was that all about? Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Robert, for those stories. Turning the page just a little bit. The next speaker we have up was knew Mr. Dolan more because she was one of the principals that thought he was a pain in the ass. So, Chris Dennis.
They always have these speakers down like this for short people. Brad wouldn't like that. Well, not at all. Oh, sorry, Bob, sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. As Bob said, I'm Chris Dennis, and I'm a proud alumna of Azusa High School. It will always be home of the Aztecs. It is so great to see everybody. As assistant principal here in the 90s and principal, I got to know Brad as an administrator. And he was someone that dedicated, as we have heard before, his life to service and those to serve and to love, both in the classroom, although I didn't really realize he had thrown that chalk. You guys hid that pretty well. He had an impact on all of us, didn't he? I know that at this point in time, I'd like you to look at each other in this gym and acknowledge one another with a nod, a smile, a handshake, or a hug for Brad, please. You can do it, Stecky. Thank you. Instead of delivering a 20-minute eulogy regarding Brad that I know that he would hate, I've decided to share and highlight the characteristics I believe made him an outstanding educator and coach. As stated before, his rapport with students. This rapport was because he showed a sincere interest in them as individuals and was consistently fair in dealing with them. Brad developed self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-worth in his students. You know, he may have sat on his desk or behind his desk as he taught, but he knew his subject matter and used different angles to teach that subject. Although Brad was never a fan of staff development. There are a couple of you in here that are teachers that weren't either, and I had to drag you into those staff developments. But I could shove him every once in a while to go to a conference, whether it be an SAT prep or an AP conference. You know what he was most interested in? And you see that here today in this gym. Learning from some of the parents what their students were about and the students themselves. You know, there was a common sense of community in Dolin's classroom that created a social connection that you've all talked about previously. His students had a sense of belonging. They felt emotionally and physically secure in that classroom. If a student needed lunch, heck, I didn't know he bought cars, but if he needed lunch, he'd give you the money. If a young lady couldn't afford a dress to go to one of our dances, he'd purchase that dress. And you know, one time I looked at him, I said, you know, there's no dress code, but I was wondering, you've had that hoodie on for about 2 weeks. And he looked at me and goes, well, a student gave it to me. There you go. The last thought I want to share with you was the spring of 1999. Our girls softball team had made it to the CIF playoffs. We, meaning head coach Todd Gehring, assistant coach Dolin, and athletic director Sandy Gehring and myself, and the girls were going to make our way up 395 on the eastern side of Sierras to play in Bishop. Well, you know, those bean counters at the district office wanted us to take a big yellow school bus. Can you believe that? But we wanted to take vans. Because, you know, if you're going 8 hours up probably one of the most dangerous roads, you don't want to be in a big yellow school bus. You want to be in vans, right? So Dolin comes into my office, and Dolin never came in my office, ever. Maybe once or twice. But he looked at me and he goes, you know, Chris, if those bean counters at the district office don't buy the vans or rent those vans for us, I'm going to pay for it. I said, well, Brad, I'm going to give Rod Gata a call at the district office, and we'll see what the superintendent can do. Well, good old Rod came through for us, and we had those vans, and we drove up to Bishop. It was far more comfortable and far more enjoyable. You know what? We may not have won that CIF game, but for us and the student athletes, memories of a lifetime. Although Brad did not graduate from Azusa High School, I would additionally say that, indeed, as the motto goes, once an Aztec, always an Aztec. I will conclude with an Irish poem. The best things in life are the people we love, the places we have been, and the memories we have made along the way. For you, the family of Brad Dolin, thank you for sharing him with us. And for the students and community of Azusa, how very fortunate were we to have him on our lives. Thank you all. Thank you. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Mr. Larry Winsenreed, who was my government teacher when he was just a lad of about 22. He'll get up and say a few words about Mr. Dolin.
Gosh, this seems so unfamiliar. I was a teacher here at Azusa High School from 1969 until 2004 when I retired, became a BITSA mentor. I now work for National University. When you're a teacher, you can't stop being a teacher. That's one of the lessons I learned from Brad, that it was okay to get involved in students' lives. Okay, my friendship with Brad is a real odyssey. Talk about opposites. I wore a shirt and tie to school every day, usually with a sport coat. Okay, except for days when I was coaching, and then I always wore the coaching shirt and so forth like that. I knew absolutely nothing about basketball, and yet I ended up being the head basketball coach with Brad. Basically because of students, and some of them are here in this room today. There was a student named Robert Lopez. Some of you might remember Robert, half Hispanic, half black, popular kid, lived in the foster home. He challenged me to a basketball game. Well, I had to go practice my basketball. So I went to Jerry Searcy, who was perhaps the wisest man I ever met, who was the head basketball coach, and said, would it be okay if I just went to practice with the JV so that I could just sort of hone up on my basketball skills? I ended up being the freshman basketball coach. Did I know anything about basketball? Not really. I mean, you pass the ball, you try to put it in the hoop. But did I know about kids? You bet I did. And on my very first freshman basketball team was Christian Demery. Okay? He, along with several of the kids on that team, convinced me that I could be a coach because we won game after game after game. And everybody's going, but you're Azusa, you're not supposed to win. But we did. Well, Mark Schuster was involved in that too because he was the JV coach. Okay. And I moved up to the varsity level when Doug Teeter took over, and Doug and Brad and I were the unholy triumvirate. And I would sit on the bench. It was my job to say, we need a timeout, we need a timeout, we need a timeout. But we coached through that. It was basically because of Christian that I got involved on the varsity level, because Christian stayed in for all 4 years. A kid who, as a freshman, wanted to stop playing. He'd go, Coach, take me out, I'm terrible. He'd dribble and hit the ball off of his foot and so like that. And he'd be embarrassed. And I'd go, no, stay in there. You're going to play. He was all league his senior year because he stayed and he played and he learned. Okay. Then came along a student that I cannot call by any other name than Jackie, because Jack was his father. Okay. I've been here that long. Jackie was second generation. And then third. And when one day Peggy Hill, his granddaughter, came up and said she was going to be in my class, I said, no, you're not, I'm retiring. She would have been the great-great-granddaughter of our library. And I said, I can't do that anymore. Anyway, how did I get to Brad? Well, Brad was always sitting in the stands watching our basketball games. And you had to understand Brad. Brad had a prickly personality. He could puncture any balloon. He would sit in faculty meetings and go, that's a stupid idea. And you know what? He was almost always right. But what was great about Brad was when he punctured your idea, he had another one to take its place. And his usually worked. Well, in the 1990s, education got a little wild. We started experimenting with all sorts of different things. And our superintendent at that time, Blaine Stiff, volunteered Azusa to be one of the lead schools in the Every Student Succeeds movement. That meant we had to come up with some really wild curricular ideas. Brad and Doug and I, working along with several other people who are still, some of you are still in this room, but we sat down and we came up with the idea of dividing the freshman class into families. And the families would have the same social studies, English, math, and science teacher. And then they'd go out for their electives. And Doug Teeter and I became the lead teachers in that group. And of course, our first choice for math teacher was Brad. That was no doubt about that. We had Dave Lewis as our science teacher. Dave, who did the drama stuff because he was innovative. We had Nancy Schneider, an alumna, who was our English teacher. Okay? And our social science teacher, unfortunately, was not me because I was the lead teacher. It was a young gal who ended up going to another school district because they offered her more money. Are there any Azusa board members in here? The family idea was wild and crazy by comparison because our family decided we didn't want to play by the rules. We made our own schedule. We had kids moving. Sometimes they started first period, second, third, fourth. Other times they started third period and went 3, 4, 1, 2. And our principal couldn't handle it. He just came unglued. You can't do that. And we'd go, why not? We know right exactly where the kids are. Well, what if we need them in an emergency? They had given us a device called a beeper. Talk about modern technology. They could beep us and we could call the main office. And we said, so beep us, we'll tell you, we'll go get the kid and bring them to the main office if that's what you want. Oh. Then we came up with the idea of why do we have to have math 1 hour a day? Why can't we have it 2 hours or 3 hours and just not have anything else that day? Yeah. Why can't we teach social studies all day on Thursday and show a film that lasts for, Oh, you can't do that? You have to match the bell schedule. Well, it was Brad who said, no, we don't. And like I say, he would stick a pin into any balloon, but he would come up with a better idea. Well, the family thing lasted for 2 years. And it lasted basically because of inertia. So much does happen that way. I would point out that I was not only Chris's teacher, but the other two speakers who came up, Robert and Sheriff, who, I don't call Joe, I always called him Sheriff, because his hair was bright red in those days. My wife's hair is the same shade. She took the shade off of you, basically. And Chris goes way back. She was one of my first teaching classes. And so many of you in this room who probably were there, Brad taught me it was okay to love you. Brad taught me it was okay to give you things. Okay? And you know what? Every dime that I've invested in kids has come back 100,000 times. Look at just in this room. And this was just sort of put together. Can you imagine if we'd had time to really put together a presentation for Brad Dolin? There wouldn't be any empty seats in here. But to get the word out is so hard to do, because once you're an Aztec, you are always an Aztec. And like I said, the path for me to become a friend of Brad was amazing, and yet we became incredibly close friends. He still never admitted that, okay? He still never agreed with many ideas because I was a little bit on the Pollyanna side as a teacher. I always tried to see the bright side of things we were doing and the best in kids and so forth. And Brad would go, no, you don't. You don't want to do that. And then we'd stop and think about it, and generally it was right. And so I'd like to end by saying Brad was not a friend of mine. He was a good friend. Okay. And Brad was not a good teacher. He was a great teacher. And so if we keep that ideal in front of us, we can all go out and be better people, and it's basically because of people like Brad. So he joins a pantheon of people in my life that helped me become the person I am. And I really appreciate Brad.
Thank you, Larry and Chris. Turning the page again, the most important people in Brad's life, as we've all heard, maybe not the most important, but up there were his students. So we'd like to hear from a few former students, and starting off with Jack Ramirez.
Yes, my name is Jack, or as Jackie, as Mr. Winsry likes to say. It is hard for me to say our teacher's first name as well. Very, very difficult to say that. Just listening to everyone speak tonight, or this afternoon, excuse me, just there's that common theme of his belief in his students, his generosity. And I'm just going to speak a little bit to that too, because he really impacted my life in many ways. He was my freshman year geometry teacher, and there was a couple of us in here, they were there as well. It was a wonderful class. But after first hearing of his passing, I was able to reach out to a few of my friends from the class of '94. Crazy, it's 30 years this year. I still can't believe that. But there's that common theme. Everyone had a special moment that Mr. Dolin made us feel special. When you spoke to him, he was present with you. He felt like he had a plan for you too, even though I don't know what that is, but it felt like he had a plan for me. But I think our class in particular held a special place in his heart. That's just me. I started Azusa in the fall of 1990, and I had a great connection with Azusa High already. My parents grew up, went to Azusa, they're Aztecs, worked at the district, so I was able to come around Azusa High quite often. But I didn't get to meet Mr. Dolin until that first freshman year class in the fall of 1990. In fact, when I first came into the class, I did think he was maybe a gym teacher too, because his sweatpants, hoodie. I wasn't quite sure, but then I heard he was a coach. But he somehow made wearing sweatpants look cool. That was Mr. Dolin. I think the important thing that first semester of high school, I think as a freshman coming in, you're all kind of nervous, feeling how am I going to fit in this space? And he made that classroom feel very, very comfortable. I remember because we had sophomores, juniors, and even a few seniors in that class, and I was like, wow, I'm just part of them. And that was just his way of making everyone feel. And I did almost get hit with a few pieces of chalk too, so I didn't avoid that throw. But he did make me feel wonderful and welcome, and I greatly appreciate that. Well, after the first couple of weeks of school, maybe as the semester starts getting going, I really realized I'm really lucky to have Mr. Dolin as a teacher, and just talking with other kids and like, oh, I have this teacher, or I don't have this teacher. I felt very, really lucky to have had him as my teacher. Fast forward 2 years, and now I'm a junior. Mind you, Mr. Dolin and I had a lot of conversations about sports. Like I said, UCLA, we both love UCLA, even though he said the same thing, they suck. He said that same thing to me, but we both love UCLA. So I knew him as a coach, but I'd never had him as my coach yet at that point. Mr. Dolin was an assistant coach, just like Mr. Winsry with Mr. Teeter. They were our varsity basketball coaches. And I'd played freshman basketball and I'd played JV basketball. And I just didn't feel or know that I was good enough to play varsity basketball. And so I wasn't, after football season that year, I was like, yeah, I'll just take a season off and then get ready for baseball. And then I just remember, this was, those moments, sometimes you have those moments in your life, this is the moments at our school. I remember him coming up to me and saying, just looked at me and said, Jack, how would you like to play varsity basketball? And while that doesn't seem like much to the average person, it blew me away, because I had zero expectations of playing. And what it just made me think at that moment is, here's someone who believes something in me that I can't yet believe in myself. And that's confidence. That's confidence building for the average person, right? Like, wow. All of a sudden I went from here to, you feel that right away. And that was a very special moment in my life. And I look back on that because you don't know our trajectories in life. What this person said or did or whatever, but I know for a fact that one just moved me in a different way in my life and what I'm doing now as a father, as a coach, as a husband in my business. I know that moment there just was a big one for me. So thank you, Mr. Dolin. And he was my varsity coach for 2 years. And then finally, my senior year, he coached me in baseball. He was my pitching coach. And I learned so much from him in that final spring of my high school year. It's like he was just sort of like sending me off, right? Getting me ready for college. I can't say specifically what it was, but just being with him every day on the baseball field as my coach, as my pitching coach, it was just like sending me off, getting you ready. All right, you're done with this. You're done with this, son. You're done. This high school's over. You're going to go on to bigger and better things. And I really appreciated that spring. It was a special spring for me because, like everyone said, not only was he generous with his time, but his resources. It's just, I'm sure there's many stories of his generosity in here in this class. I already heard a car, classes, dresses, all these things. It just says to who he was. And then after graduating from high school, I stayed in contact with Mr. Dolin. He went to a few of my college games, and one summer, between my junior and senior year in college, I had an internship in Orange County. I was a poor college student at the time, and he offered his condo in Dana Point. He said that he didn't want me to have to commute from Azusa to Orange County every single day, so I stayed in his condo. He stayed up here in Laverne, and so on the weekends he went down to Dana Point, so during the week I had the Dana Point condo. How awesome was that? A Dana Point condo as a college student. It just, again, it speaks to who he was, what he did for so many people, and he just made me feel special in doing so. And then after graduating college, I came back to Azusa and substitute taught for a year. I know I subbed for Sandy's classes quite a bit. I subbed for his class a couple of times. He's mostly here. I thought about teaching because I wanted to give back to the kids, students, what was given to me. I didn't ultimately choose a teaching career, but I did choose to be that person, to breathe life, to breathe belief, to breathe strength in others as well, not only my family, those around us. I think we all have that opportunity to do that, and that's what he taught me and helped me doing today. I think it's tough to completely understand the impact an individual can have on your life, especially as a high school student. You don't know yet. You're still young. You're still experiencing things. Even as a young adult, early 20s, late 20s, it's still hard to think. You're trying to figure yourself out as an adult, maybe a parent, as a partner. But as I get older, I'm going to be 48 this year, I look back and see what a tremendous impact Mr. Dolin had on my life. And it's just amazing to see the impact that he's had on so many here with his family. Getting to meet his family is really awesome. To hear those stories is awesome. And it just reminds me of who I want to be, who I want to help them believe in themselves. And I think that's an awesome legacy to have for Mr. Dolin, right? For each of us here in this room, each of us live stream, whoever it is who or how can you be that person to be that force in somebody else's life, right? And that's very, very powerful. It's a very powerful thing that we each have within us, I think. The question, like, what are you capable of? What are each of these people here in this room? What are we capable of doing? I see a future where we're capable of doing much more, at least myself, much more than I'm doing right now. And what it takes is a person like Mr. Dolin, or like you, or like me, believing in you, that you can do that you can believe or do more than you think you're capable of, because we're our biggest critics. We are our biggest critics. And I just thank you, Mr. Dolin. May you rest in peace.
Thank you, Jack. The next person who'd like to speak is Carla. Carla, I'm going to say your last name wrong because you changed it on me. Nenes? Did I say close? That works? All right. She has some thoughts she'd like to share.
So I wrote a really formal speech, and now everyone's like sharing stories. So just bear with me. I'm gonna go through it, and things will probably pop up as I'm speaking. I first met Dolin as a 6th grader in this very gym. He was, I don't even know if he was coaching us or if he just kind of hung out. It was the National Junior Basketball League, and we were a bunch of girls with the love for basketball. And he would show up from time to time and kind of yell at us. And it worked because we were really good. I'll always remember that we were doing a drill with layups, and we kept missing the layups, and he was so mad. He's like, "It's geometry. Do you see the square? Hit the side, and it's gonna go in every time." And he was right. And so we started hitting the square and making layups. Anyway, that's the first time I formally met Dolin. He was an urban legend in my family. Because, as you've heard, he's one of these like legacy teachers, right? He was a champion for our community, for our students. He caused ripple effects in entire families, entire generations, as you've heard. He did it so effortlessly too, as you've also heard. Like, he wasn't even trying. He was just doing what he was meant to be doing. In my particular case, he taught my older brother, sister, and I, and he was the reason that any of us made it as far as we did in our educational careers. My brother Eric claims that he didn't even know there was more school to do after high school, and he wouldn't even have applied to universities if it wasn't for Dolin's intervention. And he tells me that in his SAT prep class, I don't know if it was one of the first classes that he did, this was like 2004? How old are you? Yeah, 2000, a while ago. And he started throwing shirts at students in the class. And my brother happened to get a UCLA shirt. And so he applied to UCLA. And that's where kind of our education, as a family, our educational career started. And that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Dolin's intervention. And our story isn't unique. That is the story of so many families and so many students here today or watching at home. Each one of us could tell a similar story of how Dolin taught you to be a big fish in a little pond, or how to fill out our damn FAFSA, because the best time to be poor is when you're applying to college. He advocated for so many of us because he truly believed that we could be successful. He was that extra push that we all needed. He taught so much more than just math, college prep, and psychology during his time here. And like many have said, his classroom really was a safe haven for so many students throughout the years. He probably would have hated this term, but it was a safe space before that word was even a thing. Especially during lunchtime, you could find him and Calera sharing a story and a meal. And you could always count on him to be courtside with his fold-out chair, cheering us on during games. He showed up with his actions, as he was a man of few words. One of those words was knucklehead. You knew you made it in Dolin's book if he called you a knucklehead. And I like to think that that was his way of saying I love you, because he would never say I love you. I'll end with a short story that has always stuck with me. I, like many other alumni who are probably here today, kept in touch with Dolin after graduating from Azusa High in 2011. I remember hearing from the Azusa Chisme hotline that he was finally going to retire. I called and asked why he decided to retire when he did. I was hurt he didn't retire with our class because we also thought we were his favorite. He responded that for the first time in 37-ish years of teaching, he really didn't feel like going to work. And I told him, wow, most people feel like that every day of every year. What a blessing that you just started to feel that. He laughed and proceeded to tell me that now he needed to find 3 or more hobbies to fill his time. I suggested underwater basket weaving. A very popular undergraduate major, according to him. Like many of you have said, Dolan would have been so embarrassed by this outpouring of love that has been demonstrated. But he deserved this and so much more. We'll miss him today and every day, and a little extra when we put on a hoodie, some sweats, and chucks. Thank you all, and especially thank you to the Dolin family.
Thank you, Carla. Our next speaker, I don't see her. Lizette, is she still here? Oh, there she is. Hi, Lizette, it's your turn. Lizette Salas.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry. This is going to be a tough one. That's why I asked Mr. Calera to stand next to me. And a lot of this is going to be, all these topics are going to be on repeat, so I do apologize, but as Mr. Calera said, I am Lizette Salas, a former student from the class of 2007. I'm pretty sure I'm speaking for many of us into thinking that this day was going to be later rather than sooner, but I am honored here to speak about our Dolin, an amazing teacher, mentor, coach, friend, uncle, brother, and son, and now I just add great uncle. And I'm pretty sure he's saying right now, okay, golf team, enough with this mushy crap, short and simple, keep it moving. And that he also hates my shirt right now. But for once, I'm not gonna listen to him, so he's gonna just have to suck it up and take this all in. I was lucky enough to have him for 3 years, freshman geometry and 2 years of SAT prep. He wasn't your typical teacher. He was straight to the point, unapologetic, quick to call us out on our BS, taught us about accountability, mainly by calling us knuckleheads and kicking us out of class, which I was a victim of. And he was so unapologetic, but very sincere. And he helped us understand our true capability along with staying true to ourselves. He was a great example of that, since his legendary wardrobe never changed. No one will ever pull off a t-shirt, sweatpants, and chucks the way he did, or yell at you during a basketball game for not getting back on defense, or call a varsity football game every Friday night the way he did. Dolan understood that we were meant for more. He filled that mentor role that we needed to exceed even our own expectations. I think that's why whenever we went to him with great news, like a college acceptance, he had a very nonchalant reaction, almost as if he knew it was going to happen, as long as we were willing to put in the work. Room 310 will forever be Mr. Dolan's classroom. To us, that was our safe space. And I'm happy to see his wisdom has been with us in one way or another to bring us here today. I will say one of my life's proudest moments was seeing Mr. Dolin in the gallery at one of my professional golf tournaments several years back. And of course, he was wearing his legendary attire, which brought me great joy. And worried about his feet because he was wearing his chucks and walking 5 miles. He lived such a beautiful life, and I'm so thankful to be here in front of all of you former classmates, faculty, community. This one hurts, and we love him so very much. And I know wherever we go, we have a piece of Dolin with us, and I know I'm not one of his athletes, but I know for a fact I would not be the person or athlete I am today because of Mr. Dolin. So thank you so much, and may he rest in peace.
We're supposed to do the video right now. And then we're supposed to have a little bit of an open mic. And then I'm supposed to close it up. I want to switch that up a little bit. Can we do that? Does anybody care? Let's change that up a little bit. Let's do the video after I do my last little talk. So, yeah, she's next. Yeah. So, the next speaker that was scheduled is Marlene Ministeri, who I didn't know the connection she had with Mr. Dolin, so I was very excited about this. So I can't wait to hear what she has to say. So, Miss Ministeri, will you come on up?
Hi. Actually, I had a lot of years connection with Mr. Dolin that most of you in this room don't know about. It's been a while since I've seen Brad, but as many of you shared, he's one of those people that you're so lucky that you got the chance to share space with that person. And I had a lot of years to share that space. Back in 1985, I found myself as a first-time principal at Powell Elementary School. How many Powell Elementary Schools? Okay. So I walk into this school, and the principal that had been there before me had been there for like 18 years. And so I walk in as this 30-something kid in the eyes of most of the staff members there. And you can just imagine that it wasn't the easiest of times. Most of those staff members probably would have liked to see me quietly leave out the back door. But I did not do that. And I was so glad that I didn't. So out there among these staff members was a man about my age, dressed in either shorts or baggy sweatshirts and flip-flops, and I hardly saw much of him during the time that I was there. But he seemed self-assured, confident of himself, very quiet, didn't participate willingly in a lot of the staff development activities that were at the school. But Mr. Dolin was a third grade teacher. How many of you knew that? Okay, third grade teacher. He spent all of his time in the classroom, including lunchtime. But as a new principal, I really needed the support of my staff. Every once in a while, Mr. Dolin would show up at my office. And when that happened, I knew one of us was in trouble, usually me. But I enjoyed the brief encounters that I had with Brad because he always had something important to tell me, spoken very candidly, as you can imagine. When we agreed, life was good. When we didn't agree, life was still good, because I could still count on Mr. Dolin to ultimately do what he needed to do, even though I was the administrator trying to nudge him in that direction. And I will always remember him as that supportive person that I needed at that new school. Like you heard from Miss Dennis, he wasn't wonderful about staff development. And unfortunately, he got to hear about staff development for a lot of years from me because I spent time as an assistant principal at Azusa High School and then again at the district office level. where I was pulling him to staff development from the district office. So rather than Mr. Dolin being one of those pain in the ass teachers, I was a real pain in the ass administrator that he seemed to encounter no matter where he went. But the most important part of Brad's contributions to kids occurred in that classroom, a phenomena that in my first role as principal and in future years as a curriculum person, I could observe firsthand. Brad zeroed in on all of his kids, and particularly those kids that were struggling. He just demonstrated a special compassion and attentiveness to their learning. All kids, especially those third graders at Powell, loved him, and that was just something that went on and on and on, no matter what level he was at. If Brad had a discipline problem, he took care of it. I didn't see Brad's kids in my office. Amazingly, as a third grade teacher, his favorite form of discipline was to take this recalcitrant kid, push him out the door, and say, "Go hug that tree." And I can remember the first time walking around the Powell campus, approaching this kid who had his arm around the tree and saying, "What are you doing there?" "Dolin told me I had to come out and hug a tree." So I used to muse about how those poor trees absorb the energy and the feistiness of so many little third graders at Powell School. So my question to a lot of the students out here, raise your hand if you ever had to go out and hug the tree. Yeah? Oh, yay! Okay. So now, as so many of you had, I'm looking up at Brad, and I'm saying, rest easy, Mr. Dolin, because you did good. Thank you.
So when we started putting this together, we thought it would be a good idea to have just sort of an open mic for a few minutes. So I'm a little concerned we might be here till 10 o'clock tonight. But if there's anybody that would like to say a few words, a few quick words preferably, please come on up, introduce yourself, and say hello.
Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? All right. Yeah, it's beautiful. We here. Oh, man. Haven't been in this gym in a while. Sheriff hit it right on the nose when you said, Calera, you hit it on the nose when you talked about a safe space. I just got to address the elephant in the room. I was the black kid in Azusa. Hey, it is what it is. And excuse me. Shanisha, where you at? Come here. You come up. I need my teammate. I need some support real quick. Come on, Cynthia, you come too. Come on. Clap it up for my teammate, yo. Woo, okay. I think for Dolin to see me before I saw me was the biggest thing. I didn't think I was going to college. I thought I was going to the NBA. And Dolin was like, yeah, right, I'm going to be the president of the United States. So when he sat me down, him and Sheriff, and told me to write down colleges I wanted to go to, that was like beyond my mind. So to come from Azusa High, and to play Division I basketball on a full scholarship. Clap it up for that. He never judged me, you know, he fed me. My senior year, actually, my family, we had to move from Azusa. I used to live just literally next door to the school. I could hop the fence and sneak into his class. But, you know, we had to move to Altadena, and my family got a lot of mess for choosing Azusa High over any high school I could have went to. But Scherf and Dolan were like coming after me when I was in 8th grade, attending Foothill Middle School. So these men believed in me long before I knew what I could do. So when, I got this. So when I didn't have a way to get to school on time, Dolan would drive me every day to get me to school. And even though I was the best person on the team, no disrespect to my teammates, he made sure I was in practice because he understood the importance of that. I didn't know anything about travel basketball. I didn't know anything about club basketball. I honestly didn't know Los Angeles existed. I didn't know anything existed past the 210. And he would drive me in this little green truck. And I didn't know what traffic was because I was asleep. But I wake up and he'd be like, put your shoes on. I'm like, what are we doing? You're going to play basketball. You're going to college. I'm like, bro, this is not Azusa High. But Scherf, you know, I heard people talk about not calling him Brad. But I called him my Brad dad. Because he was just like a father to me. He didn't have to do anything he did for me. He didn't have to stand up to the administration office when they would try to bench me for being late. He's like, we need her. I don't care what you're going to do. You're not going to take her out of this game. So I appreciate him putting his job on the line for me. And I'm laughing because, like, that's the relationship we had. He was transparent with me. He taught me what hard work meant. He taught me what accountability meant. And when I went to college, I couldn't believe I was there. I almost got kicked out. But he did teach me how to study, and the only two people I can think about was Coach Scherf and Coach Dolin. When I was under my GPA and I almost lost my scholarship, I didn't want to let them down. And I went from a 1.6 to a 3.2 GPA. And I finished at San Diego State as the captain of my team. I didn't play a lot of minutes, you know, going from Azusa High to San Diego State University. But again, life is bigger outside of Azusa. But the things that they taught me as far as working hard and believing in and depending on your teammates, Dolan taught me that. And it's ironic that I'm here because now I coach high school basketball. And I'm always yelling, help, help, rotate over. And I want you to know, Dolan, that I do understand that defense is your best offense. And I take pride in being service to other people because that's what you are to me. I love you so much, Dolan. And like Scherf said, if it wasn't for you two, my red dad and my Brad dad, because you were red at one point, I wouldn't do the things that I do now. So thank y'all so much.
Since I'm up here. Sorry, I get emotional. Dolan knew my oldest brother to my youngest. He would always say, Edda's smarter than all of you guys. This make me laugh, and I was like, you don't know. You don't know. But he always believed in me. Way more than I believed in myself. And he always like, you're limiting yourself and how smart you are sometimes. And then after he said Mary was the smartest, my brother's back there, so I had to tell him. Once I graduated high school, I would talk to him here and there, and then he said, hey, come coach the national junior basketball team. The one that Carla talked about. And I was like, okay. I never coached before, but he was like, you can do it. You're smart. That's all you need. The 3 minutes, analyze the team, and you got it. You have to know who the fastest one is, who the best player is, who you have to stop. And I learned so much from him. But when I was coaching the NGB team, he said, how are you going to get to the games? I said, oh, wait, they're not all in Azusa? He said, no. And I was like, oh, well, I don't know. I haven't thought about it. And then he said, okay, here's my truck. I need a new car anyway. So I said, okay. And then he said, pretend I sold it to you for $1, because you got to pay taxes on that if it's a gift. And I said, thanks. I had no idea. I took him out a couple times for his birthday. He never let me pay. But he was an amazing person. And to this, he always believed in all of us. And he was always there, always there. And I would text him, and then he would call me back. I hate texting. I was like, okay. But I appreciate every moment I was with him and everything he did for me, because I still have that green truck. It's my brother-in-law's now because I gave it to him. But we have it because it's a great memory that we can't get rid of. So, thank you.
My name is Janisha McCoy, class of 2005. And I just want to say thank you guys for showing up for Dolin, because even though he wouldn't have wanted any of this, I appreciate you guys for showing up, and I appreciate Dolin for being a positive influence in all of our lives and getting us these 2 championships to have on our jacket, and just making it to CIF with him, yelling at us the whole way back, even losing by 70 points. He was still there, and he still was there to motivate us even after that, graduating, seeing at our graduation, and not being able to see him before he passed, but just remembering his life goes on in our hearts, and just may he rest in peace forever. God bless.
And I have my last patch that I didn't put on my jacket. It's my MVP patch, but I think it's safe to say that Dolin's the real MVP.
Wow, how do you follow that? I was gonna wear my Letterman jacket too, but it shrunk. It didn't fit. I graduated in 1989 when Joe was red, and still red at that time. And myself and Vice Principal Velasco weighed 160 pounds, so that's as long ago as that we graduated. But what an honor and a privilege it is for me to be here to speak about Mr. Dolin. What an honor and a privilege it is for me to be a former Aztec, to be a former student and former athlete of Mr. Dolin. But I'm here also today. I am currently a city council member for the city of Azusa because of people like Mr. Dolin. And when I met Mr. Dolin, I was in his math class, and some of you know this and some of you don't, but back then, that was in 1988. He actually was coaching at Glendora at that time, but he was teaching here in Azusa. And I remember that day we were playing baseball against him, and he goes, oh, yeah, you're supposed to be an Azusa stud, right? And I'm like, well, I don't know. We have a double hitter against you today. He says, every time we strike you out, you give me a Snickers bar. I said, okay. I said, who are you pitching? And he gave me the name of the pitcher. Little did he know that pitcher I caught in Pony League here in Azusa, so I knew what he was going to throw. I said, okay, I'll bet you a Snickers bar. You're not going to strike me out. So in that game, I hit a home run, a base hit, and a double. So in Mr. Dolin's fashion, the next day, instead of saying good game, we lost. The Glendora beat us. Glendora was better than us that year. But in Mr. Dolin's fashion, he came the next day and he says, I want you to show up at Azusa High School this Saturday, bring a tee, because although you got 3 hits off of us, there's still problems with your swing. He couldn't say good game. I don't owe you any Snickers bar. So I came that Saturday morning. He brought his tee and he corrected my swing, and then he took me out to lunch at his favorite restaurant, La Torteca. And he paid. Mr. Dolin paid. But my favorite Mr. Dolin story is, my senior year, he came and he coached us my senior year. And he was our baseball coach. And that year I was injured. I only got to play like 3 games, but I had the great opportunity to sit next to him as he was our coach. And I learned so much from him, like Joe said, just how to interact with the kids, how to coach. But we would fight a lot. He would debate you. And my favorite Mr. Dolin story, and I'll end with this, is I wasn't even there for my favorite Mr. Dolin story. So my name's Jesse Avila, and after I graduated, my sister took his class, and he's going through roll, and he says, he gets to her name, and he says, Joanne Avila? And he looks up, and he says, you look just like him. You're Jesse's sister. And she says, yes. He gets up, gets an empty desk, puts it outside in the hallway, and he goes, you sit out there for the whole class. And he made my sister sit outside for the entire class for no reason, just for being my sister. So those are the kind of stories. And again, Azusa, the city of Azusa and Azusa High School are a better place because of people like Mr. Dolin. May he rest in peace. Thank you.
I'm actually short, so it doesn't matter. I would have regretted if I didn't take advantage to honor one of my favorite teachers here. I attended from 1994 to 1998. We call that the golden era at Azusa High School. You can disagree, but you're wrong, and that's fine. But I didn't play sports. That's a different story, but there were a lot of attractive girls who were in the drama program, and I was way more interested in them than playing sports. Mr. Dolin was involved in everything, so we heard a lot of sports stories. He came to every play. He asked me when I was going to be in his class, and I told him how much I hated math. And I was trying to figure out ways to never do math at this school because I wanted to graduate, and numbers are still bad for me. But he would come to every play. He would tell me it was mostly bad, but I had potential. He told me one time that I was above average, and didn't completely ruin his night, and I appreciated it. So my junior year, he had worked on me. He called me Travolta for 4 years, or New York. That's all I was referred to as, not Josh. It's actually funny because many teachers here still remember me by name, and that means I either had a really good or bad legacy at this high school. He, Travolta, and he told me that he had actually went out of his way to make sure I was in his 0 period class. I had no idea what geometry was, and that's not being dumb. Pre-algebra was a C-. I cried to get that from a D to a C in front of the teacher. That's how good of an actor I was. Regular algebra, I asked so many questions, he actually asked me to just stop talking, and he would let me move along. And then came Mr. Dolin. So for all of our stories, big things, guy was a rad dude, right? We can agree on that. But for geometry, his teaching was impeccable. It made sense. And I thought when I found out, I'm at that age now, and my kids are here, where everything makes me emotional, so forgive me. We came down and we shot bank shots for 0 period geometry to work on angles. I remember that to this day. And when I found out we were going to be here, I thought, man, that's absolutely perfect. Because as much as he would hate us being here, he would love the fact that he got to work basketball into shooting bank shots in the only math class I ever got an A in my whole life. And my senior year, Drama Nerds, we went to New York for a week, and he told me, I hope you never come back. Not in a mean way. He said, find Broadway. That's where you belong because you're a star, and you're bigger than this place. And to see him all emotional, and it's terrible, and my daughter's going to make fun of me when we leave. And But I will tell you that it's one of those things that there's several people in this room. I'm going to have a hard time ever calling you Chris, principal. Was kind to me in ways that I really didn't deserve at this school. Mr. Scherf, incredible. You were always nice to me. Mr. Windsor, that guy's a Class A history teacher. His history class was phenomenal. And then there was Mr. Dolin, who, despite arguing sports with me, telling me I was wrong about all my opinions, still showed up to every play, still was nice enough to tell me that I may one day be able to do community theater, but still knew the right thing to say at the right time. So to you guys, I'm jealous. He was rad. I'm glad you got to spend more time with him. I had him for one class, and I got him during plays looking at me like he really did hate everything we were doing. So thank you guys.
How lucky are we to have known Dolin? And when you're in it, you don't know that you're so lucky. And then the years pass and you realize that not everyone is like him. And then you really, more years pass and you realize you'll never know anyone like him. I'm very thankful and full of gratitude. Thank you to the Dolin family for letting us have this, for giving us the opportunity. Obviously, when I find out the news, I'm like, are we all going to like a funeral? Like, what's the plan? So I'm really grateful for this. I'm part of the class of 2000, and my name's Leslie, and I'm part of the 1999-2000 girls basketball team. And if you ever forget that, don't worry, because there's a banner with my year up there. And we won league those years. And it was a phenomenal experience, one that I'm very grateful for. And Dolin was able to, I just want to speak about him as a coach for a moment. They treated us like stars, the coaching staff. Scherf and Hart and Dolin, they treated us like we were really important suddenly. And they really took care of us. And I will never forget the day before a playoff game, coming into this gorgeous girls' locker room that they created for us. The chairs all had a blue towel with our name and the number embroidered on it. And no one had ever done that. And honestly, that just doesn't happen a lot. And it's a towel that is currently on my Peloton bike that I still have with me. And it was this token of appreciation, and also just this thought of I believe in you. Also receiving all of this cool gear, custom hoodies, all of these things that they would shower us with, and just so gracious. To keep us inspired and motivated, and it worked. And I'm so grateful. By my senior year, I had Dolin for, I want to say, 4 classes. I had him for math, SAT prep, and I was his aide, and also for PE. It was basketball. Anyway, by my senior year, I was spending my whole day with him, and it was definitely a safe space. Night games, or we play basketball in the winter, so sun goes down early. He would always be around, and I'd say, hey, can I have a ride? I don't want to walk. He'd always say yes, and it was always great. I just always felt so comfortable, so safe, so supported, and so seen in a way that I'll probably never experience again. So I want to say thank you so much to him and to the family, and again, the acknowledgement of just how incredibly lucky we are to have known him and to have loved him. Thank you.
My name's Brittany Knotts. I'm class of 2006. I was a nerd and continue to be a nerd, so there are a lot of teachers here that I loved and adored. Mr. Calera, Mr. Scherf, I see Mr. Demeray from middle school, which is wild. But I don't think anybody impacted me more than maybe Brad Dolin and Dave Lewis, who we also just lost a couple years ago. He was just simply the best. All of you have said so many wonderful things about him, so I won't recap. But I was lucky to have him for 3 years, 3 different classes also. Whenever I talk about him, I describe him as our personal Mr. Feeney at Azusa High School, because I had him for, pre-calculus, honors geometry, SAT prep, and then also AP psychology. So what a versatile guy, that just goes to show it. In fact, he gave me this t-shirt that I'm wearing right now when I was applying to college in my junior year, and I'm gonna miss him a lot. I will never forget him. I am so glad that we kept in touch a bit after I graduated. Got to have a couple lunches with him up at Max's on Azusa Avenue. And there was nobody like him. So rest in peace, Mr. Dolin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Juan Sanabria, and I was class of 2002 here. So it's been a while. What? Okay, sorry. I'm not good at this sort of stuff. You look back on high school and your time there, and I personally didn't take it very serious. I didn't think it mattered, and turns out that it really does. But you do learn some pretty valuable life lessons early on in life, and aside from Benny Flores teaching me in auto shop one day after I got into a fight and got locked into his cage, he taught me that it's not always what you know, but sometimes it's who you know, and he saved me that day because he locked me in his cage instead of letting the narcs take me. Brad Dolin also was very impactful in teaching me life lessons. One of those was that X equals B plus or minus the square root of B squared over 4AC all over 2A. So don't forget that. But aside from that, the thing that I love most, I'm Gen 1 immigrant. I came here, in the early 80s. Didn't know English, learned it. I had to come, 0 period hours to get free food, and I would hide in Dolan's class to eat my food because it was embarrassing that we were too broke. So he gave me refuge during his 0 hours, and I would always see numbers, and numbers were so fascinating, and I loved them. And the thing that I love most is that Dolin was unapologetically Dolin. He didn't, to the best of my knowledge, really censor himself because he was who he was at all times, in the public eye or behind closed doors. It didn't matter. So long as you were a good person to him, he was a great human being to you. When I finally had him as an actual student, he already knew who I was. I remember getting kicked out because we would have high fives in class. And then I remember specifically one time we got separated and put on the other side of opposite sides of the classroom. And then I was like, psst, psst, high five, connect it. And we connected hands all the way across the classroom just so we could send a high five to one another because we got a simple addition problem right. And he was just like, great, get the hell out. And he kicked me out of class. But, he not only threw chalk, he hit me with an eraser. At first it was a chalk eraser, and then he got a dry erase board when I had him the second time. So he hit me with a dry erase board too, and I was like, that guy has some aim, man, because those things are kind of flimsy. But, he would always call us frickin' frack. I don't know if anyone else got that. And then, I just loved him so much because in the Marine Corps, we call them old salty dogs. They just have been through it, and they are who they are, and you just take it or leave it. And what I learned from Dolin is that he wasn't only a sensei of sports, or like a guru of sports, but he was that way in life too. He was a great judge of character, and he got to know you sometimes better than you knew yourself. And I remember I had told him, because a lot of my buddies that we play sports with, I love the Bruins. And then I told him, I want to go to UCLA, Dolin. And he's like, they don't offer underwater basket weaving. What are you going to do? And then I was like, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. And so I had all these high dreams and expectations, and then something called 9/11 happened. For those of you that are younger, you can Google it on your phone right now. But it drastically altered the path of my life. And I remember sitting there thinking, I have to do something. And I never told anybody in high school But I remember going to Mr. Dolin and telling him, I want to go to the Marine Corps because I have to do something. And then he's like, what about underwater basket weaving at UCLA? And then I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll do it later when I come back, or if I come back. And then he told me, do what your heart tells you. Take this time to grow and learn, and take what life gives you. So I deployed, I went to the Marine Corps, and I'll never forget that conversation that I had with Dolin, because he didn't try to talk me out of it. He knew it was something that I wanted to do. And like so many people here have shared, he cared about you caring about yourself and doing what makes you happy. Now I'm wrapping up my second master's and I'm applying to UCLA, and they still don't have underwater basket weaving, but maybe I can get it when I go there. But much like the thespian before, I had to take the moment to just say thank you, because to the Dolin family, just this simple conversation with him completely shifted the trajectory of where I was headed in life. I was this knucklehead kid that just messed around in school and had no idea where I was going to go or what I was going to end up doing. And then he just told me, just follow your heart, do what you want to do. And now I'm on the brink of completing a promise that I made to him, or more like a dare. But I wanted to thank everyone here for showing up. Thank you, Calera, for putting this together. It's amazing. Thank you for the Dolin family for sharing him with us. Thank you to the Asic family for showing up and being here for him. And God bless you guys. God bless the Aztecs. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Maddie Bassi. I was Maddie Varner in high school, and I was class of 2005. Mr. Dolin was my basketball coach for all 4 years of high school and my AP Psych teacher. I was tired a lot in lunch, so I would sleep on the floor in his classroom. Sometimes it would just be him and Calera and Scherf in there talking it up at lunch. And I would tell Mr. Dolin, okay, just wake me up when it's time to go to class. And he'd come over to me and he'd just kick my feet to wake me up. Hey, go to class. Mr. Dolin also, I don't know if the girls said this earlier, but he was a defensive coach for the girls varsity basketball team. And he would always reward us if we got a charge. He would get us double-doubles. And I remember it was like getting a double-double was almost cooler than anything else we did because it was like the one time Mr. Dolin would like smirk a little, like he'd give you a little something, like he was proud of you. I also, something I want to point out that maybe hadn't been pointed out was that Mr. Dolin actually had a really soft side. I know we all know that, and we're all joking about his prickly nature, but when he was wrong, he would own it. I had a goal my freshman year, and he straight up told me I wouldn't be able to do it. And he gave me all the reasons why. He had seen other students try to do it, and they weren't able to do it. And then when I was able to do it, my senior year, he was the first one to be like, man, I'm glad I was wrong. He's like, I'm proud of you. He also could be very vulnerable. Those who took his AP Psych class will know what I'm talking about. He shared about his life, and it was hard. He didn't share it with everybody, but in that class, he told us what he had been through. And he told us that because he knew we cared about him. He wasn't doing it to prove anything, but just because he knew we cared. And he knew that we could apply what we were learning in the class to what he had been through. Mr. Dolin, I got to hang out with him. I had been abroad, and then I came back, and we actually had come to watch a badminton game. And Calera was busy doing his thing, and I got to sit for hours and talk to Mr. Dolin. Badminton was not his sport. It's a long sport where you sit around a lot waiting for games. But he came, and he sat there, and you know what he talked about? This was after his stroke, his first stroke. He was retired by that point. And he talked about his students. Even then, he talked about what they were doing, where they were at, how we saw the dynamics in Azusa High School had changed, and the way he was so smart. He just talked about the trends in students and how they had changed, but that was still what he was talking about. The last thing I'll share is, other people have shared this, but he stepped in where our parents couldn't be. My parents were going through a very difficult time when I was in high school, and there were a lot of conversations that I had with Mr. Dolin that most people would probably have with their parent, but he was there for me to answer questions. I cried and he'd make fun of me, so I'd laugh, but he didn't have to do that. None of this, he didn't have to do any of it, but he chose to, and I'm so grateful. I'm grateful to his family. We may not have met you in person, but he talked about you a lot. We knew about you. We knew he cared about you so much. So thank you for sharing him with us.
Hi everyone, my name is Novan Kumintas. This is a bit of a twofer for on behalf of myself and my older brother, Octo Kumintas as well, who is currently in Finland, but he sends his warmest respects and warm wishes to everyone who's gathered here, his family, his friends, his students. Mr. Dolin is always just a generational, once in a lifetime teacher to always have. Generational also from our family, because when I first stepped into his classroom as 10th grade, it was always, oh, you're the second Kumintas, because my brother had him in his senior year as well, so he knew us pretty well. When it comes to AP psychology classes, the two faces that I would always remember are those weird Philip Zimbardo psychology videos that he played, and Mr. Dolan's face as well, as he shared his stories and connected to the students as well with his own stories that he told us as well, and our stories that we told him. It was almost psychology and just almost counseling together. I want to share a couple of words that my brother had sent me in regards to this event. Brother, he was been everywhere: Georgia, Ohio, Kuwait, Syria. He's a current veteran and currently in Finland, and he just wants to say these calling words here. Dear Mr. Dolin, many people here will have come to say that your thank yous and goodbyes, so I shall be brief. You are my teacher for only a year, and I have visited your classroom to chat until I graduated. At first, I thought you were just a goofy teacher who didn't take things too seriously. Your classroom was rowdy at times, but you could command the room with your presence and personality, even in sweats and t-shirts. So thank you is just a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, which dilutes its meaning. Saying thank you only accomplishes the formal obligations to give gratitude. No, the most authentic method to profess that gratitude is to emulate your examples for others, help others, bring out their hidden potential, and serve the community. Actions speak louder than words. May you continue your legacy by guiding others positively and following your great example. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is, that's funny. When I was in high school, I didn't go by this name. But in high school, I used to go by Lourdes Samonte. I go by Lulu Monte as well. And I'm class of 2012. And I had Mr. Dolin as an SAT prep teacher. I think everybody's been throwing out the word SAT prep, but nobody's over here really talking about it. So let's talk about what really happened in SAT prep, because I don't know about some of you all, but we did a lot of random things in SAT prep. I don't know where the prep where it was happening. There would be days he'd be like, "Alrighty, y'all. The administrator said we have to do SAT prep, so we're gonna do some practice problems." But most of the time we were doing our homework in that class, doing other classroom homework. But what I know of Dolin in regards to SAT prep is that he was my college coach. I'm a proud first generation college student. first in my family to graduate from elementary school, which was Magnolia. First in my family to graduate from middle school, which was Foothill, and then here in Azusa. And so, I didn't have Dolin as a basketball coach, but he was my college coach. He would not want us to cry right now. I'll cry later. But I just want to ask really quickly, are there any educators in this space? Raise your hand, like high school, college, elementary, I don't care, K through 16, whatever it may be. You all are so important. You truly change lives for so many people. And it's probably one of the most thankless jobs, most underpaid jobs. But till this day, like literally last week, last month, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, I talk about how this high school teacher encouraged me to do what's called dual enrollment. In high school, I attempted to do AP, and I dropped out of AP English. I was failing, and I was really discouraged. I was like, oh, this is like, I want to go to college. If I don't have an AP class, what do I do? He said, go to Citrus, go take a college class. And I asked him, well, isn't that for smart kids? And he said, no, that's where hardworking kids go. And you're a hardworking kid, so you go over there, take a college class. You take that English 1 and you redo it, and you're gonna pass it. I passed with I remember when I was failing that class, I was like, what do I do, Dolin? He said, go talk to that professor, you go talk it up and figure out how you pass that class, because you're not gonna get credits if you don't pass. And I passed with a C-, but because I did that one dual enrollment course, I was like, Dolin, okay, I wanna take another one. And then at that time, in high school, I used to be the photographer girl. So he's like, go take photography classes there because we don't have them here. And then I think it really instilled to me, like, I think I want to be a Dolin when I grow up. Help kids see college as an option and opportunity. Don't think that college is just for smart kids. He always told me that if I wanted to go to college, look at someone older than you and follow what they're doing. So I used to look to certain older folks, and I'm like, alrighty, what are you doing? So I would follow in their footsteps. I'm like, Dolin, should I do this? And he would give me like pointers, tips, and tricks. And I think it's those types of educators that really go above and beyond in ways to inspire you to see beyond what Azusa High School is, to explore college. From that moment on, I decided I wanted to give back to Azusa High School, and I've also wanted to go into education. And so I currently work at a community college, and I help kids participate in dual enrollment because of that. I think about those kids who say, well, isn't dual enrollment for smart kids? Isn't that for like kids who want to, get ahead on credits? I was like, dual enrollment is for kids who can work hard. And if you are a first-gen student, you have the qualities of being a hardworking person because your parents were hardworking, so you can do it too. I think about how I have an overabundance of college shirts as well, because I had this thing, Dolin had all these college shirts. He told me one time, he said, if you wear that college shirt, you'll most likely get into that college. I was like, all right, cool, we're gonna rack up all these college shirts. And so I still have an overabundance of it. And I think to me, when I think about Dolin, my last conversation I had with him was a couple months ago. I had one of my mentors who went to go visit Dolin, and we were in a FaceTime call. And I told him, like, Dolin, remember you told me to take that college class? Well, now I'm helping other people take college classes too. He was like, well, that's it? I was like, can never satisfy Dolin. I think for me, when I think about Dolin, Dolin is truly the reason why I went to college. He wrote my letters of rec for EOP. He wrote my letters of rec for scholarships. He did my recommendations for UCs. I didn't get into none of them, but I got into other schools. He always would slide me a paper and he would say, hey, do this program. I'm like, what is it? Well, read it and do it. he would allow me permission to go see Ms. Bauman, go see the College of Career Center. And so, you know, while we didn't do much SAT prep, we all knew he was that college prep teacher. He was the one who was going to tell you how to find the ins and outs of college. And I really, I remember the day when I found out he passed. He was like, dang, Dolan, I did all of this because of him. So, you know, to my educators in this space, you know, keep doing the great things that you do because you all inspire so many. I know Dolan was an amazing coach in basketball and many sports, but he was truly my #1 best college coach. And I'm thanking him for that, and I thank you all for sharing him with us as well.
I think Mr. Dolan would be smiling right now down because I have a tremendous fear of public speaking. So I wrote him something and I just want to share with everyone. The most powerful motivational conversations come from the people that told you I couldn't do something. And that was Mr. Dolan. He was one of those people. Because he knew by telling me that I couldn't do it, I was now bound and dedicated to show that I could do it. And that was Mr. Dolan. He had a way of reading students, reading their personalities. I call them his superpower. And using that knowledge to guide the students to be the best version of themselves. Whether it was to pursue a higher education, whether it was to play basketball or any other sport in college, whether it's to build your dream career, his SAT prep course, as everybody heard, his psychology course, his coaching ability, his mentoring ability, all those strong characteristics that he had got me to where I am today. I am here 16 years later, a Berkeley graduate with a psychology major and helping others today. Mr. Dolan believed in me. He believed that I can achieve anything because I was a shy, timid kid. And I guess I just want to leave it off with, there are 2 ways that people leave this earth. One is by taking your last breath, and the other one is by the last person saying your name. Well, Mr. Dolan, every time I face a challenge, I'm gonna ask myself, what would Dolan do? Because Dolan, you impacted my life in so many ways, and I thank you for everything. And I know you wouldn't like this as much as I'm not a person that likes recognition as well, so thank you for getting me to where I am today.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Melissa Burrow, class of 2000. Oh, I have 6. So I'm trying not to be all over the place, and I'm trying to gather all my thoughts before I came up here because Dolan had a huge impact in our family's lives. I'm one of 5. Number 2, so we have a big range of Barogas that have come here through this school, and we've all had Mr. Dolan. I had him I was like Leslie, my senior year, I think I had him for all my classes as well, all, my senior classes, SAT prep. I was his aide as well. I don't know if we were aide in the same class, but we didn't do anything but hang out. And so I was trying to gather my thoughts and think of all the stories. Everybody's stories are all, similar, the same. I think the one thing we can gather from these stories, with Dolan, it's the little things, right? It's when you're pissed off because you messed up in the game and you're walking out, and I know Lysandra can attest to this, walking out angry and coming back to the end of the bench, and he just comes over and gives you a little whatever and gives you a little pep talk and just says, fine, and you kind of get yourself together. Those were the Dolan little things that really mattered. Through the throwing of the chalk, everybody prior to, I guess, class of 2002, because I had no idea what he was throwing after that when they got whiteboards, but now I know it's dry erasers, so that was probably a lot harder than it was just little pieces of chalk, Miss Dennis. They're small. Didn't hurt. Don't worry.
So nothing that, you couldn't just dodge real quick. You knew if you were late here for his class, it was coming. So you had to kind of walk in quickly, late to zero period. But so all the little things, I have a ton of stories myself, but we won't get into details. And hopefully, everybody here will be able to gather and tell their Dolan stories with each other after this. But for one, I'm going to share this story. It's not like the greatest story, but I feel like it's something that probably really affected his life, and it wouldn't, I think our lives too would not have been the same without it. I was a young freshman or sophomore, I don't remember the exact year it was, but I think we were coming, having lunch or dinner after an academic decathlon. I don't remember all the details, it's like over 20 years ago. So we were coming back academic to that decathlon. I heard from upperclassmen, my older sister, things like that. Oh, Dolan used to be engaged. He, da-da-da, because we were always like, why is he dating anybody? He'd be a great dad, he had all these things. And so I really pushed and pushed him and said, Dolan, what happened? Dolan, what happened? Dolan, how come, I was told you were engaged. What happened to, He's like, you don't want to know. And I'm like, oh, come on, Dolan, just tell us. And I push, just because I was a nosy, kid. And in that moment, he said, she passed away. And I was like, I didn't want to know, shit. And I never asked him any more details after that. But I do every day when I come into contact, when I came into contact with him after, I always wanted to just let him know that, I think he would have been a great father. I know he was a great uncle. I know he was a great, great uncle, and that, that he would have been a great father and, a great husband. And that tragedy, that loss must have been so much for him, because he never spoke to me about it again. I never asked him again. And I just wonder to this day, him going through all of that, and if, life would have panned out, just how he would have hoped it panned out for him, how much we wouldn't have been impacted. And that even though through his tragedy of whatever he went through, that I don't know if as many lives would be affected. His life could have been a completely different life. And it just goes to show that we never know in the face of tragedy and things that we go through in life, that you can still turn around and make an impact and make a difference. And for me personally, the way that Dolan impacted my life, I was not only his student, I was also able to work alongside him as a coach, and I mimicked a lot of my coaching style after Dolan. I was gave the rides to kids, provided and helped people the way I could. And so Dolan, I think, forever have an impact in the lives of Azusa kids forever, whether they know his name or not. So I have no idea why Dolan started teaching in the Azusa district, because he did not live anywhere close to here. But, for whatever reason, whatever the universe, why it brought Dolan to Azusa, we are forever grateful, my family especially, and a lot of these, kids that he did coach as well, I'm sure are just as grateful. So thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jess Bowling from class of 2006. Hi, Mr. Clare. So a lot has been said today about how Mr. Dolan was kind of a tough love person. And it's really because he could see the best version of you, and he would get mad at you if he didn't see you trying to move towards that. If he saw potential in you and he didn't see that you were going towards it, that's when the tough love would really come out. And me personally, in high school, I didn't really have very good grades. I wasn't not gonna graduate, but it certainly wasn't like college performing grades. I failed English twice. I had to retake it over the summer. Mr. Clare, Mr. Scherf probably remember me. I never did any homework at all, really, ever. But what my teachers did notice about me was when I would take tests, I would do very well on the tests, right? And I was put in AVID. I remember AVID. I failed that. I have an F on that on my transcript. But then I took Mr. Dolan's SAT prep class, and I really liked that. And people talk about how Mr. Dolan didn't like to be acknowledged for things, but I do remember one time there was like a prep rally here or something, And it was after we had taken the SATs, and then he told the whole school that I got a perfect on the math SAT. And he announced that, and it was the first time I'd ever been like acknowledged for doing well. And I think that's what saved me going to college was that SAT prep course. Just being able to stand out. You know, if you looked at my GPA, it wasn't amazing, but seeing that I did so well in that really, I guess, helped me. And now I'm a professor. I have a PhD in math because of that. And so not just Mr. Dolin, but also Mr. Calera, all the educators in here, thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'll try to keep this pretty short. My name is Vanessa E. Torres. I have to specify the E in there. There was 2 Vanessa Torreses my year. But everybody talked about SAT prep, math, all those classes, but I mean, Jesse just mentioned it, but there was AVID, and I was in the first AVID class here at Azusa High School, and Dolin was the teacher. And you can imagine that was pretty fun. Just, I mean, it didn't feel like a classroom. It just felt like a fun, safe space to come and, do homework and, And Mr. Dolin was a mentor, and he was only the AVID teacher for a year, but everybody knew that he was still a safe space to come to and, ask for college advice. And, I never saw myself going to college, but I was the first to graduate in my family. And that was all because of Mr. Dolin's help and his guidance. I was in psychology with him, and I remember this day clear as day, and this was like 16 years ago now, and he told me to stay after class, had his legs crossed, feet up on the desk, and he's like, "You need to drop this class." But, he didn't say why, but I knew that it was because if I failed that class, it would ruin my chances of getting into a 4-year university, and, I'll never forget that. And I think I left him speechless this one time in the psychology class, though. He did say, he was talking about Seinfeld in this, episodes of Seinfeld, how there's a, hidden Superman in every episode. And I was the only person who knew that. And I think he was shocked that I knew that of all people. But every time I watch Seinfeld, I always look for the Superman. I always think of him. And on graduation day, when I handed him the slip with my name on it, I put Vanessa E. Torres. And I told him, "Don't forget the E." And he's like, "How could I ever forget?" And it's safe to say, just based on all the stories, and all the outpouring of love, I definitely got chalk thrown at me and dry erasers and had to hug a tree and had to sit out class. But it's safe to say that we'll never forget Mr. Dolin, and I'm so thankful for his guidance and all the years that I got to know him, and I'm sure all of you are too. So rest in peace, Mr. Dolin.
I think the alarm turns on in about 10 minutes. Again, thank you to everyone who shared a Brad Dolin story today. There are many more, countless stories. I strongly encourage you to, excuse me just a minute, it's a very important thing right here. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, thank you. Holy moly. Okay. So we're live streaming this, and some things were written that I promised I would read from Sandra. Greetings from Texas. I'm eternally thankful for his wisdoms and patience, especially since we didn't make it easy. I graduated from UC San Diego in a BA and UT Austin in Masters in Education because of him. Thank you, Dolin. From Jake. Rest in peace, Mr. Dolin. One of probably 2 teachers I look back on fondly from high school. He used to throw markers at me for getting answers wrong. I look back at that fondly. Antonio says, rest in peace, Mr. Dolin. You were my favorite math teacher and such a positive role model. You made high school a little easier for me. Love. Thank you, and you will be missed. Jazzy. I know, right? Jazzy says, hey, Mr. Dolin, words cannot explain the impact you've had on my life, but I'm eternally grateful for all that you've done. Sincerely, one of the many knuckleheads you positively influenced. She's in Austin, Texas. Jamie Mizell, I owe my SAT score to Mr. Dolin in his psychology class. Taught me so much. But better than that, I knew he genuinely cared about me. She said she's a shy kid. And my future. He's a big reason I became a teacher. Michael Fausto. Thank you, Mr. Dolin. AP Psych started my path to living my truth. I think of you fondly for your kind ear and being chill about that day. The universe is blessed because of your existence. Man, these are tough. Manuel, thank you, Dolin. You were an absolute inspiration to my life. You helped me become a better person in life. Expect the best of ourselves and help others achieve the same. Thank you. Shirley, he was my basketball coach, my mentor to go to college, and now I'm in education because of his great example. I wish that I could be half the educator he was. I still got 4 pages to read. Oh, thank you. Thank you again. I'm sure there's so many more stories, so many countless stories that we all have. I encourage you all to get together after this somewhere else because the alarms are going to go off. Have a beverage and share those stories that weren't shared yet today. You may or may not know that Mr. Dolin had the strangest diet for an adult. He only ate chicken burritos and chocolate chip cookies for most of his life. In the last 10 years, though, after he retired, that he did share with me, he regretted every single day that he retired. He did bring in some tuna fish, get into his diet, and Cheerios. He was very excited about Cheerios. And Mountain Dew. I mean, but there was always the chocolate chip cookies. The family has provided a few chocolate chip cookies out there on their way out to grab one to snack. And for me, every time I eat a chocolate chip cookie, I think of Brad. He loved them Costco chocolate chip cookies so much. Also on the way out, the family has left, we've got some note cards back there. If you didn't get a chance to write something out, please do. Please do. They would like to hear all of these stories. And I'm bringing it to a close. I want to read a couple of quotes that I found that made me think of Brad. The first one's from Mother Teresa. She said, I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. The second is from Dalai Lama. There's a theme. Just as ripples spread out when a single pebble is dropped into water, the actions of individuals can have far-reaching effects. Brad was a boulder in that water. He changed many, many lives. He pushed students to do things they didn't know they could do. He pushed them into college, helped them with registration fees. He took care of students' medical bills. He helped them with uniform costs and other athletic fees. But most importantly, he believed in his students. He didn't see barriers. He saw ways around challenges. Many of those same people he helped continue to help today. They continue to change lives today. They're teachers, they're doctors, they're lawyers. The number of people directly and indirectly affected by Brad is huge, not countable. I encourage all of you to make more ripples. help more people out, whether they're young or old. I encourage all of you to be like Brad. Thank you. That's it.